Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Really happy to see you back in our Zoom world. Welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 658th New Social Environment. I'm Eleanor, a Programs Associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Nicolás Vargas, Esteban Girón, Khadija Haynes, Isaac K.D., Joel Feingold, Ramza, Cea Weaver, Frank Morales, and Holden Taylor. We are also thrilled to welcome poet Joselia Rebekah Hughes here to close today's program. Before we get started, the Brooklyn Rail acknowledges Black Lives Matter, and here in New York, we are on the Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. We recognize that land acknowledgements are not a replacement for necessary decolonial work, but they are a reminder of place, and that the legacies of dispossession and enslavement that sustain and enrich the stolen land we are speaking from. And now to introduce today's guests and host. An organizer for the abolition of private property, Nicolás Vargas is a founding member of the Brooklyn Eviction Defense and the Alma Council of Tenants. Esteban Girón has been a member of Crown Heights Tenants Union since 2014. He is the union delegate to the Autonomous Tenant Union Network and represents Crown Heights Tenant Union in the Housing Justice for All, Right to Counsel, and Rent Justice coalitions. As an organizer with the Communist Party USA / Young Communist League, Brooklyn Eviction Defense, Crown Heights Tenant Union, Sisters in the Struggle, and Flatbush Tenants Union, Khadija Haynes' heart lies in lifting her community and all working class people out of the dispossessory conditions that capitalism breeds. Isaac K.D. is a tenant organizer, trail walker, tail spinner, and table turner. Ramza spends his time attempting to organize homeless people. Cea Weaver is the campaign coordinator of Housing Justice for All and a member of New York City DSA. She has been a tenant organizer and a housing rights campaigner in New York State for over 10 years and is a co-founder of the Crown Heights Tenant Union. Frank Morales is an advocate and participant in squatting of vacant spaces in the interest of creating homes with and for those in need. He is a lifelong resident of the Lower East Side, an Episcopal priest, and a founding member of the NYC chapter of Christians for Socialism. Joel Feingold is an organizer and writer in Brooklyn, New York. He is a co-founder of Crown Heights Tenant Union. And finally, Holden Taylor is an organizer with Brooklyn Eviction Defense, a proud member of the Crown Heights Tenant Union, a Marxist Unity Group member, and an adjunct professor and PhD candidate at the City University of New York Graduate Center, studying housing, financialization, and political economy. We have such an amazing superstar group here to talk today, and I'm super excited to pass it over to you to start us off, Holden. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank you so much, Eleanor, and thank you to the Brooklyn Rail. This is such a fun opportunity to get all these tenant organizers. We're on meetings with each other constantly, but we don't often get the opportunity to sort of sit back and talk about the big picture. So I'm very excited for this. So this conversation is based around, yes, thank you, Raven. An essay I wrote for the Brooklyn Rail in the July-August issue called Who is for Tenants? And so I'm gonna quickly run down some of the major points from that and then pose some questions to my beautiful panel. First point coming out of that essay is that tenancy is defined by anyone who is not in control of their own housing or the housing of anyone else. Control is a very important term here. In that, on that note, the tenant movement's horizon is working class control over where and how we live. And the conditions for that are socialism. Next point, the housing justice movement is, because of historical developments outlined in the essay, dominated by large nonprofits. Next point, there is a practical and structural contradiction between nonprofits, especially, but not only those that are landlords and evict people, and the tenant movement's horizon. Next, tenancy is a site of class war and fits into the larger auspices of historical class struggle. Next after that, tenancy is inherently precarious, but right now, especially in New York City, is increasingly in critical shape. We can look at the sweeps of our houseless neighbors. We can look at the $1,000 rent hikes of our neighbors. We can look at the falling and deteriorating state of NYCHA and the increasing financialization of NYCHA.
Holden, I think we lost your audio for a sec.
Holden, we lost your audio, babe.
Can you guys hear me? Is my internet back? Hell
It's
yeah.
back. Yeah.
Hell
Nice.
yeah. Sorry, I'm working off my new Chromebook. Sometimes a little stilted. Okay, 2 more points, and then we'll hop into this lovely conversation. Point: capital requires and produces unevenness and fracture in the various differentiated forms of tenancy, such as market rate renters, rent stabilized tenants, public housing tenants, houseless tenants, and even homeowners with predatory mortgages. We all understand them as tenants, but because of capital, they're fractured and atomized. And then 2 more points. Because of this fracture, the tenant movement in New York City needs cohesive organization, and we need that in the form, namely, of a citywide tenant union. And very last point, the tenant movement and socialism are more than improved conditions. They represent the horizon of truly transformed social relations. Those are the major points of the essay, and now super excited to begin this conversation. And I think the way that I've imagined this conversation is really just us tenant organizers looking at the state of tenancy, how we got here, and where we need to go. And so I think maybe we can start with that question of what has led us to this point. And I know we have some historians on the panel. So maybe I'll push it to you, my friend Joel.
Sure, thank you, comrade. Yeah, I think we'll start with the crisis of capitalism in 2007 to 2009. You know, at the moment of this great crisis, when mass eviction was really, you know, cresting, when foreclosure and dispossession were really rampant, the tenant movement was at a low ebb. There was the generations that had fought for sort of beginning in 1946 with the preservation of rent control in New York City when wartime price controls and rent controls were destroyed almost everywhere else. New York City's working class, its tenant movement, its socialist and communist parties, its labor unions preserved rent control. At the same time, that generation fought for desegregation of housing. The major struggle then being the desegregation of Stuytown. That generation was still with us in 2007 to 2009 and still leading fights. And then the sort of successor generation that fought for and won the rent stabilization law of 1969 beat back the sort of Friedmanite neoliberal ideology that was starting to become endemic, that rent control drove prices up was the mentality, was the economic truth that was foisted upon the public at that time, became common sense. In the face of that, the generation that fights for the rent stabilization law of 69, the Emergency Tenant Protection Act of 1974 won, right? Then the great crisis of divestment, of landlord arson, of the destruction of the Lower East Side, which Frank will tell us about, truly the elder of the movement who's on the call, will tell us about that. All those generations had fought and won crucial victories, but when the next great crisis hit in 2007 to 2009, the movement was at a low ebb. We had seen decades and decades of destruction of the protections of rent stabilization, the divestment from NYCHA, from public housing, the Faircloth Amendment, which prohibited any new federal spending on any single new public housing unit. And hundreds of thousands of apartments were forced out of rent stabilization. So in this moment of crisis, the movement was not prepared. And so a new generation, some of the key figures of that sort of new energy are on this panel tonight, figured that we need to look back to the roots of the movement, look back to the rent strike of 1907, look back to the tenant union model of a revolutionary tenant union. And that's where that new energy began. We were brutally beaten in 2015 when we tried to abolish the neoliberal reforms, AKA the eviction bonus, vacancy decontrol. We were thrashed, but by 2019 and the new energy in the social democratic movement and DSA, and of course from the ground up, the sort of consciousness that eventually produced the great rent strike of 2020 to 2022, with all that energy, we were able to abolish the neoliberal reform. So that's kind of where we are, but now we're being pushed back again. So let me step back.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joel. So if that's where we are, I think before diving into the present moment, is there anyone else on the panel who wants to add to that history?
I can add a little, and I think this is Cea. Can folks hear me okay? Cool. I think some of the stuff that I would add, I think Holden, you lay out really nicely in the essay, but I'll just elaborate a little bit here. During the 1970s and 1980s, but really continuing up until through the Giuliani administration, there was a big push to, well, starting really in the 70s, there was a big push from, I think, really led by like a militant tenant movement to take over housing, distressed housing that real estate had abandoned, and convert it to housing that was community controlled. Unfortunately, what really happened is the housing was converted, but without ongoing organizing and without ongoing sort of like political activism in the face of a lot of neoliberalism, as you lay out, what really happened is a lot of organized and militant tenant organizations pretty much became, not-for-profit property owners overnight. And that legacy, I think, has really shaped how the tenant movement has been able to fight for reforms and how the tenant movement has been able to pursue different types of organizing tactics. In the run-up, Joel talked about how we were really not able to win rent reforms for years. 1994, our rent control laws were completely gutted, and we started seeing the loss of hundreds of thousands of rent-stabilized apartments. The system, loopholes are put into the system by Pataki at the sort of behest of the Republican legislature, and really at the behest of conservative lobby groups that passed model legislation to eliminate rent control in 36 states that year. George Pataki and Joe Bruno at the time won like Legislator of the Year by APAC, and they're sort of the design to sort of like make sure that rent control would self-destruct was planned by the right. And I think because we had a housing movement that was really being organized by not-for-profit landlords, they really, even if they say that they like rent control, they really have this perspective that's like, rent control is not necessary. What's necessary is like the not-for-profit housing that we provide. One of the problems that I think a lot of people on this panel know is that it's often really low-quality housing, and people don't like living in it, amongst all sorts of other problems of a lack of tenant agency and all sorts of other stuff. So I think that movement was really not able to mount the fight necessary to strengthen and expand rent stabilization and rent control because they didn't really believe in it, even if they liked it okay. There was really no fire behind it. So I think like we did win in 2019. We were able to beat back a lot of those sort of like neoliberal loopholes. I think in large part because people started organizing tenant unions that were sort of outside of this structure. And I just want to say a little bit about like rent control and like the sort of coalition of forces that have like helped to keep it in place as a result. I think it's the, you know, working class tenant movement of grassroots tenant unions. It's also sort of the largest affordability program in New York City. So you can get allies for it of people who, you know, wouldn't ordinarily support attacks on capital like rent control is. And so that sort of coalition of people is able to like mount a fight. That being said, I think where we go from here is less clear. But I do think that the sort of lack of investment in organizing and building a tenant movement since 1970 is like very critical for like where we are today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Super robust. So with that kind of bringing us to where we are, let's talk a little bit about the conditions that we're operating in. So I want to kick it over to my comrade Nicolás with the question of what are the current movement strengths and weaknesses? What are the contradictions you see, and what are the possibilities? Maybe we can hold off on possibilities for now. We'll get there.
Okay, yeah. Thanks everyone. This might be a little give me like a minute or two, or maybe 3, I don't know. But yeah, so I mean, like defining like what is here and like kind of what we're seeing on the ground, and you know what we're experiencing, what we're hearing from tenants, talking to them, doing inquiry, and you know, I think we've all kind of had a shared collective experience from the pandemic throughout the moratorium to the end of the moratorium. We've all had, you know, individual experiences from our families and our neighbors. So I think, you know, a lot of this is going to resonate. I don't think this is anything that I'm kind of theorizing abstractly. So I mean, firstly, we see market rate rent hikes that are just skyrocketing out of control. Like throughout the city, we're just seeing insane market rate rent hikes, you know, upwards of $1,000 for a one bedroom unit within a year lease. So, you know, what this is causing is a lot of kind of, I think in my mind, a kind of a restriction of socialist imaginary and imaginary outside of, you know, like state reforms or, you know, kind of market friendly solutions to the lack of availability of affordable housing. And, you know, on top of that, I think, you know, the immediacy is also really concerned that like, you know, even rent stabilized tenants are seeing kind of the highest increases on their rents since Bloomberg, right? Or was it Giuliani? One of those bad guys. And then also we have, you know, the eviction mill that's churning at such an intense velocity that, you know, we haven't really seen before because of the backlog of evictions that were happening, that were stayed because of the moratorium and its subsequent extensions. And then we have hard-fought legal legislative rights, like right to counsel, which are functionally non-existent right now because of the intensity and just the amount of evictions that are happening. We don't have enough lawyers to actually grant that right to tenants. So it's just not happening. It's something that we've won, but it's just not being implemented or enforced. Then we have the warehousing of units, landlords, you know, constantly blaming the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act of 2019 for the reason why they don't want to, you know, open up these units. And then anecdotally, we're seeing pretty large disinvestment or intentional neglect on the part of landlords and management companies as a form of like punishment or revanchist retaliation against tenants because of the moratorium and the extension, you know, trying to, you know, correct the market, et cetera. This is also leading to, you know, a lot of illegal deregulation, forced displacement through a lot of, you know, extra legal means. And since the pandemic, really, and since the moratorium, we've seen anecdotally on the ground, and I'm sure people have heard about it in the news, just intense kind of brutal repression and retaliation from landlords because of the moratorium and because of, you know, the very now slow court process that, you know, it's happening fast, but there's such a intense amount that it's taking quite long. And this, you know, has caused a lot of trauma and reluctance for tenants to kind of fight back. And then, so I guess what I want to talk about with strengths and weaknesses is like, you know, what the current movement can do to meet the current desire of tenants in crisis to organize, because tenants do want to organize, they do want to fight back, and what we can do as a movement to kind of meet that desire. And I think one of the strengths, or a lot of the strengths, come from the many different autonomous tenant unions in New York City, you know, both historically and contemporarily, from the tenant councils and citywides of the past that help, you know, drive this militant movement, but also that's what kind of forced the hand of legislators and politicians to actually, you know, give us these, you know, basic rent laws that we have now, or renters laws and renters rights that we have now that we take for granted. And also, you know, things like the warranty of habitability, that all of these things that are, you know, we're very contingent on this like mass militant movement that was very centralized. But then also, you know, more contemporarily, the spontaneous and militant TAs and TUs that came out of the pandemic and the moratorium. I think we have a lot of very tried and true methods and structures and internal development strategies, and then also new ones that are developing every day and being experimented with. But I think a weakness, you know, to complement that is that we're not connected and centralized enough, that we're not speaking to each other or sharing these, you know, distinct and diverse strategies. You know, a lot of the time we're just reinventing the wheel. And so a lot of that, the movements that came out of the pandemic and the moratorium, these tenant unions, ended up dissolving because, you know, they either were, you know, exhausted or frustrated, and they didn't have that connection to a legacy and also the long-standing unions that existed right now. And with you know, more mentorship and more connectivity, we could have had, you know, a lot more retention and success. And so I think to complement that, I'm done soon, I promise. To complement that, we have organizations, national organizations like the Autonomous Tenant Union Network. And within the Autonomous Tenant Union Network is a national, you know, union of tenants, tenant unions, coalition of tenant unions, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, network, that are, you know, have these committees that are sharing kind of inter-union, you know, tools, practices, all these things, extremely potent things that, you know, can be, you know, applied to different conditions, you know, as long as we, you know, talk about it and work together. So I think, you know, lastly, I think locally the weakness was that during the moratorium, BED was using a lot of data scraping tools to identify tenants who were in some imminence of eviction because of defaults. We were able to target, you know, do targeted door knocking, get tenants to file, you know, OSCs, stop their evictions. And we just couldn't do it alone. There was hundreds of thousands of tenants we were trying to reach. And so we tried to reach out to other tenant unions, to other organizations across New York to share the tool. We did it somewhat successfully, but it would have just been so much more seamless if we had a citywide. If we had a citywide where local tenant unions were able to share these, you know, diverse and distinct organizational tools, we would be able to just share this across, you know, the citywide and across the boroughs, and we could have done more than just help stay these evictions. If we would have had that, you know, larger capacity, we would have been able to do the more patient and careful work of organizing their neighbors, creating permanent structures of immediate eviction defense and tenant power, like tenant associations. You know, we tried to do that to some success, but by and large, we were just providing kind of a service to stop these evictions. And so since the moratorium ended, we've changed that orientation, you know, to accommodate for the new conditions and these experiences. But that's kind of the drawback of these small, you know, localist experiments in these groups, you know, that they tend to not, you know, to share out, you know, their deltas and or roses and buds and thorns or whatever. And, you know, they tend to kind of ossify themselves on strict ideological lines or even within small friend groups. And, you know, with a citywide, you would be able to have those conversations and share those experiences.
Thank you, comrade. I think the point about creating organizations that are bigger than social circles, I think is really important. I'm gonna kick it to Cea, and then I want to hear from Isaac, because I know Isaac is in all sorts of tenant organizing spaces.
Hey, sorry. I agree with a lot of what Nico said about the need for organization, and just one sort of piece of context I wanted to add is that a lot of people in New York and in New York City have the experience of organizing in their workplace and not necessarily in their home. And I think one of the things that is holding us back as a housing movement or as a weakness is that the sort of like formal and organized labor unions in New York are largely in a political alliance with real estate across the board. And so people maybe are organized in their work, but their work is explicitly organizing with the real estate industry against tenant demands. And that puts us in a really hard position when we start organizing people as tenants. And I think it's something that we need to find a strategy to overcome. A citywide tenant union would be a great first step.
Thank you, Cea. And yeah, that point about labor unions operating in like very parochial, sort of ensuring their own members get what they need has been super harmful to the tenant movement. Isaac, talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just want to echo a lot of points Nico said about like, you know, the kind of a weakness being like cliquishness essentially. And although I'll say, I think there were like times during the council rent movement where like almost overcame that. I think we might have like a video of one of those times. Like, I think that like there's some like interesting moments, like the protests in front of Kavanaugh's house where there is, I think, we actually saw a lot of like pushback, I think, because it was almost as if we had, you know, overcome our cliquishness a bit. I think like just something that's really important to highlight in the history of like the tenant movement, especially recently, is that hasn't been mentioned, is just the role of like, you know, kind of law and order politics, the role of the right during the 90s. And I know Frank can talk about this much better than I can, but as far as I know, because you lived through it, like the right, I mean, you think of moments like the Tompkins Square police riot, like this was the kind of central thesis of Neil Smith's The New Urban Frontier, is that the kind of, you know, Juliana era policing is really coinciding with this like war on tenants. And this class war is gentrification is class war. And that class war isn't just about, you know, rising rent. It's also about, you know, increased broken windows policing. I think like, you know, like Eric Adams definitely is actually really good at, and other politicians in his ilk are really good at kind of merging this idea of like the bad tenant versus the good tenant, you know, the bad tenant who's just like trashing their house and, you know, never like, you know, on rent strike for all the wrong reasons, and really kind of demonizing this figure, I think is really able to tie it very well to the kind of like our city is in disorder, the kind of classic law and order rhetoric, and which is, you know, which has always been the case, that when, you know, in times of crisis, that, you know, politicians on the right are actually very good at like kind of creating this like organizing framework of like, the city is in disorder, we need more cops, et cetera, and use it to push like just broader kind of right-wing neoliberal agenda. So it's really important to think about that, and also think about that as like, I think it's both a strength and a weakness of the tenant movement, is at times we're really able to connect those. Like the movement against gentrification in New York is just totally inseparable from the kind of movement against police brutality, right? I mean, I think of like protests like FTP, right? Those like classic protests where, I mean, it was just like the kind of chants against gentrification and the chants against landlords and the chants against police just like blended in with each other. I think that's like a really good strength of our movement, but it's also a weakness sometimes, is that I do think like we do get a little plugged, too focused into like dollars and cents, and don't talk about these things in terms of wider like political context and political organizing forces. Okay.
Thank you, Isaac. And now I would love to hear a little bit from Esteban, sort of just about the movement as it stands.
Yeah, sure. That's a lot to follow. So I guess what came to mind as folks were talking was, first of all, I think that we kind of undersell ourselves on what we were able to accomplish in terms of that eviction moratorium, which was a Band-Aid, but it also took an enormous amount of effort. We were out in front of Brooklyn Housing Court so many times, and it was a movement-wide effort. I mean, there was, you know, we would do stuff with Housing Justice for All in Manhattan. We would do our thing in Brooklyn. There was stuff going on in the Bronx. It was a very, very, like, I want to say coordinated, but also not coordinated. There was a sense of spontaneity about it that I think really helped us like be nimble and be able to like, you know, on a whim, be able to throw together like a 3-day action. And so I don't know if you want to maybe play one of those, I think video number, I I forgot which numbers were which. Let's say video number 1, actually. This is just like an example of some of the things that we did probably like 15 times afterwards. So. Yes.
Can you guys see the video or no?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
I can't see it, but I recognize the voice.
If you want to figure that out, and I'll keep the ball rolling. Yeah. So there we go. There
Yeah, here we go.
So yeah, so the thing that was interesting about all that is that for most tenants and for the public at large, they think of the moratorium as this like long extended time that just sort of like existed, but we were having to do that every single time that it was like once a month at one point, just like constantly. And so so I do think that like it gave us a bit of a sense of like what we can accomplish with a very broad larger than any like individual coalition, but like with with all the strengths of the movement as a whole. I do think that what ultimately ended or killed cancel rent was the emergency rental assistance program. I think that took the fire out of some of the burgeoning tenant unions, like because a lot of people were in it because they really just they needed to be able to pay their rent, and once their rent was paid, it really didn't it was really hard to get people back into the mindset of like we could actually do something really huge here and do something historic. That's not to say that emergency rental assistance program was bad. I benefited from it, as did most of the people here. So but I do think that that was like sort of the death knell of that movement, of that part of the movement anyway. What I think is interesting to sort of, and what I sort of as a nerd sit around and think about, is the interaction between these different forces that we have working, in particular in New York City, and how those might be able to interact at the level of a citywide tenant union. We have nonprofits that have been operating in certain areas for a really, really long time, that are really embedded in their communities, that really know a neighborhood. And then you have tenant unions that are like Crown Heights Tenant Union. We've been around for almost 9 years. We know our community, we know what we're doing with our neighbors, and then how those all interact with like the coalitions, right? Like the coalitions have in them a lot of these nonprofit housing providers, quote unquote, that are not necessarily always aligned with what tenants are looking for. And that's created a lot of situations in those coalitions, and just in general in the movement, that sort of show us that like, wow, like not only are we not always on the same side, but there are some significant contradictions here in what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. So at the same time, we needed them for like the wins that we got in 2019, for example. So like a lot of the reasons that people have the rights that they have right now was because a coalition like Housing Justice for All was able to like stick together and actually make that happen. So like I don't have an answer for that at all. Like I wish I did, but I do think that it's important to like lean into those contradictions and like deal with them. And I feel like the space of a citywide tenant union is the right space to do that, because then we're all there and we're all working towards towards a goal together. And I think like once you start organizing together, a lot of those contradictions, I don't know that the housing provider nonprofit contradiction ever goes away, but aside from that, I think that there's space for oh, this is a picture of the most recent Autonomous Tenant Union in-person conference in LA. So this is like a national movement of autonomous tenant unions that are independent of nonprofits, that don't take foundation funding, that don't take money from politicians. So there's a lot of energy out there for this, the time and space that we're in right now. But we're gonna need to talk to one another and figure out, just figure out our shit. I don't know how else to put it, but yeah, that's my thoughts right now.
Gorgeous. Thank you, Esteban. Now I would love to hear from Frank, who's, as Joel said, one of the elders in the movement and who's been around and doing radical work for so long. Frank, could you talk about what you kind of see in the movement from your vantage? Frank, am I frozen? No, I'm not frozen. If Frank is, okay.
There we go.
There we go.
All right. Yeah, I mean, everything that's been said thus far has been, kind of delineating what is painfully obvious to us all, yes? The only thing I would add to that analysis in terms of the history is to overlay the kind of economistic argument, which is certainly, reasonable in terms of, how we got here and all of that, to the whole issue of social control and other motives, particularly for the displacement of hundreds of thousands and millions of people during the period of the mid-70s into the 80s, around the question of the origin of homelessness as an aspect of state repression. So, concurrent, along with the analysis, which is dominated by economics, that there is an aspect of social control there. But my feeling in terms of, my history is in squatting and so forth. So I've been focusing around what will it take to initiate a citywide tenant movement, a tenant union. And right away, to me, the term tenant, it's maybe not conscious, but not to exclude former tenants or people who are houseless, whether they identify with that term or not. So I'm more comfortable with a kind of a branding, if you will, of a housing action network or some such thing. And for me, the important points there as we look ahead would be to create a platform for the various aspects of the housing struggle, so that tenants, working class, low income tenants, HDFC people, people in rent stabilized apartments, homeless people, squatters, and so on, are part of a platform that bridges differences and works together. So for me, a vision would include that kind of wide diversity of participation in terms of the overall struggle. But most particularly for me is the question of righteousness in terms of the branding of this movement, that we understand homeless, houseless people, a slow motion genocide that's taking place as a legacy of slavery, along with mass incarceration, and begin to engage more directly with that community, entering into the shelters, for example, organizing people there, and so on. Particularly, again, my bias, my point of view on this is through direct action occupation of vacant spaces, squatting, so that the 20,000 currently vacant rent stabilized apartments in need of repairs, maybe the similar number of warehouse apartments, probably more, 200,000 vacant spaces, again, a good number market rate, but nonetheless, engage in campaigns of direct action to occupy these spaces with and in the interest of homeless people. So that requires engaging with these communities directly. For me, it's a form of it's an abolitionist struggle It's a struggle that's tied in with anti-racist struggles that I think are key, and for me provide the moral, the righteous base of any housing struggle. That's kind of where I'm coming from. And to close, I would say the initial action would be to reach out to the various tenants associations and housing organizations that we currently have a connection with, and organize a showdown action in some, let's say, some Chase Bank owned vacant houses in Queens, a showdown action where people come together and demand, and bring the bolt cutters and message it really well, and create a media event around direct action where we're not going to take this anymore. People are going to move into these spaces. That for me will create the kind of electricity around the city, around the various communities, that will put this new citywide effort on the map and bring people to it. People are looking for that. They're not looking for the same old bureaucratic response. They're not looking for a lot of abstract ideological, chit chat. They're looking for action. It's like Malcolm said, we want looking for action. So I think that kind of a showdown action, and I don't need to explain that, right? It's researching vacant property, bringing 200-300 people to that site, messaging it really well, and saying we are pro occupation of vacant spaces, along with campaigns around more traditional tenant work and so forth, and bridging these dimensions. From my understanding is that people who are houseless are ready to engage in this. My experience in working with people inside shelters when we were able to access shelters is that 7, 8 out of 10 people in the shelters are down and willing and able to move on this, and we need to provide the support and the support to help sustain that in material ways, so that we can begin to deal with what the violence of homelessness and the genocide that's taking place, and have that be the center of a wider campaign, so that these issues are brought together. That's my own point of view on it.
Thank you, Frank. Incredibly and always valuable point of view. You touched on really the importance and like the criticalness of
Frozen again, comrade. Oh no.
Is my connection again?
There you are. You're back.
You left off on you touched on.
Oh shit! You touched on the critical importance of homeless organizing and its relationship and presence and centering in the tenant movement. And so I want to pass it over to my good comrade, Johnny Grima, aka Ramza, who's done some amazing work to talk on like the state of houseless organizing, the possibilities of demonstrations.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I decided. Sorry, I didn't give anybody a heads up, but Cynthia's over here. I asked her if she wanted to get down. You know what I mean, with the meeting and whatnot.
Of course I do.
So so she's here with me.
Hello.
So yeah, talking about homeless organizing. What's the question?
Can you just,
or can I just speak freely or something?
Speak on your experiences the past couple of years. Speak on the possibilities, the frustrations. If you want to touch on anything Frank said, especially about like squatting and the urgency of it.
I come out of the squatting movement. I was in a squat for years. I left New York for a while to go to college, and when I came back, I was renting, and we got evicted. We got evicted 10 days before the moratorium. We were in a small building with just 3 apartments, and the guy in the basement went first, and then the people downstairs did something stupid and damaged the building. the guy used to get drunk and damage the building. So he got evicted second, and then we were third. We hadn't been able to afford the rent for a while because they doubled it. It's such a small building, they can do whatever they want pretty much. So it was 10 days before the moratorium, the marshals came for us.
You have a portable charger? Is that your portable or what? Okay,
And then we were bouncing from hotel to hotel. We didn't know that the city was paying for hotels. We were paying out of our unemployment. And they were using our rights against us and making us leave and go to a different hotel every 20 days so we couldn't establish residence and get rights. That's how the hotels treat it.
Cynthia, I got 4%. Let me kick it for a sec, okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
so
a USB-C over there.
huh?
There should be a USB-C over there.
Yeah.
This is a wireless though. If you can use a sheet.
It's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
You know?
It's all right. Hold
Okay.
up. All right.
Do this, Ramza.
Yeah,
If you got Qi, it's charging now.
hold on. Yeah, so yeah, homeless organizing is I haven't had a great amount of success with it myself, but I also think that I've been
Desperately needed.
I also think that that there are different ways I could have went about in the first place that could have made a big difference.
I lucked out. I just stumbled across
Cynthia,
Donnie on the street.
Cynthia, you can't keep.
I'm sorry.
Hold on. Let me speak. I give it to you, man.
It's cool. I just wanted to give you some credit.
No,
I wouldn't be any
Yeah.
place good if I hadn't run across you. You
It's
helped
cool.
me get wired in. It was great.
Don't worry about it. So,
That shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that haphazard though. It needs something a better way to get.
Ramza, it's all
so
good.
yeah, I think that part of it is just that oh my God. Yeah, no, it's I think that having meetings is important and direction too, but you think what kind of things will build trust and confidence in homeless people, right? And for me, one of the things I've spoken about before is shelter abuse and whatnot. And if somebody reports that shit, then they get retaliated against and whatnot. So really, I think that one strategy I'm trying to get going is trying to get people onto different advocates caseloads or whatever who are interested in going public about issues and whatnot. So I figure that knowing the state or homeless shelters, that they'll retaliate and try to transfer them to somewhere and do all sorts of stuff. And if the person just like acts and the state does the foul crap that it always does, then they should be protected through advocates and whatnot from the get-go. And maybe build some confidence in other people, like kind of taking a stand, trying to hold meetings and trying to get direct action. I met a few folks recently who have mentioned doing direct actions, but I'm not really in contact with everybody. I don't know. It's been a little difficult, So yeah, I didn't really prepare for the questions or anything. So I don't know. I'm very skeptical of nonprofits and who say they advocate for homeless rights and whatnot. I think that but I do think there's some strength in gaining like some of the legal advocacy, if there's any sort of nonprofits or some shit like that will already have like negotiating type shit with the state or whatever, DHS on a constant basis, then I think that it's okay for as far as advocating for somebody to get into like place from off the street if that's what they want, to utilize as a resource while doing mutual aid work. And I think a big issue too is a little bit of political education in the sense of like letting people know about the numbers of empties and whatnot as you go about it. And, you know, try to get across this narrative, try to educate people about the relationship between landlords and them not being housed, you know. And there are some radical peeps, good people in the homeless community. So, you know, and there's work to be done, man. I'm pretty sure that a movement can be grown here in New York City now, you know, under the right conditions. So yeah, that's what I'll be trying for that anyway. That's really all I gotta say about stuff, man. I'm really impressed by all y'all tenant organizing stuff and the squatter stuff. It's real cool. So Cynthia wants to say some stuff, okay? Is that okay?
Stress causing a stroke.
Cynthia, this isn't about that.
I know.
It's about housing.
I understand what
No.
Ramza,
I've been telling people.
thank you so much, Ramza. Appreciate you and your work so very much. I want to now pivot. Can you guys hear me? Am I being heard? Dick. I want to pivot now to look towards the future a little bit, to what the movement needs to do and needs to be doing. And I think more specifically, I want to talk about the relationship between the movement, the tenant movement, and socialism. And I think there's very few people better to speak about this than my comrade Khadija. So if you could talk about sort of the role of the tenant movement in a push for socialism and vice versa, sort of the role of socialism within the tenant movement.
Yes, and thank you for having me. I would just like to uplift some things that Frank said and that Ramzan said, you know, these genocidal tactics against, you know, poor and working people, against disproportionately Black and brown people, these exorbitant rents, the continuously being dispossessed from neighborhoods that, you know and that we grew up in. We can't even afford to live here. This is a genocidal tactic. And Ramzan mentioned something about nonprofits. You know, a lot of the times there is this incestuous relationship with nonprofits and finance capital. And, you know, they don't want the people to really have control over where they live. You know what I mean? Let alone control over the means of production. But yeah, they don't want that. You know, they want people to kind of, you know, push for the very, very bare minimum, very, very bare minimum in reforms, so that, you know, they're conscious enough to give legs to their kind of nebulous movement, but not conscious enough to push beyond reform, which is what we need. We need something beyond reform. And now it's necessary to fight for basic reforms, right? You know, as Lenin said, you know, fighting for basic reform, it helped raise the consciousness of the people to want more. But we need like good cause and things. We need to fight for those things. It's important to fight for those things, but it needs to be undergirded by something more militant, more powerful, more revolutionary. And we need people that want to do this for us. And we need to organize to push for those beyond just the realm of reformism. We need something more. And we need something beyond just, you know, like this kind of incremental, you know, we'll get there, but we need to do this and we need to do that. I find, you know, that this kind of reformist, kind of incrementalist kind of attitude strategically and deliberately stagnates revolutionary imagination. It is a tactic, I feel like, that people use to just completely truncate revolutionary spirit. You know, no, we're not going to go and have fucking people's war. I'm sorry for cursing, but we need that militant fight while we are fighting for these basic reforms. You know what I mean? We need that. We need both. You know what I mean? And it is not beneficial to people if you just keep pushing them to just get these basic reforms without having a revolutionary imagination at the forefront of those reforms. And so this is where actual socialism comes to the forefront, right? Not this socialism that is like this democratic kind of socialism that people are pushing, which these very people are in these incestuous relationships with these finance capitalists. And we need to call it out. It is disturbing and it is destruction to our revolutionary imagination, right? And I just also kind of wanted to touch on, you know, Ramza also mentioned, you know, and Frank, they mentioned like the homeless situation in the city. You know, I would also say there's no difference between someone who is housed and homelessness. That is where the gray area is coming in. People are living homeless inside of their homes. You know what I mean? People are houseless inside of their homes. People, this continuous unending state of precarity is pushing people to homelessness constantly, in a state of, I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know where I'm going to eat, what I'm going to eat. You know, this precarity that capital constantly breeds, these constant contradictory situations and crises, is why we need to push for a socialist imagination. We need that. We don't need these people calling themselves socialists, right? And coming in and pushing these reforms and strategically pushing these bills and things that do nothing but benefit landlords. You know what I'm saying? That is exactly what they do. They kind of, we don't need band-aidism. You know, they put band-aids on things and we'll give you this and we'll give you that. But, you know, in the back rooms, they're having these very, very incestuous relationships with the landlords, with the banks. And at the end of the day, people can't afford to live and can't afford to eat. And it creates these situations where people become isolated. You know, they use these different categories, like, you know, well, you're a market rate lease, or you're, you know, regulated, or you're, you know, NYCHA, to kind of push these antagonistic relationships between these different groups and try to create this dissension. But we need to kind of be acute in our thinking and see that these tactics for what they are. You know what I mean? They're deceptive tactics. And at the end of the day, who is benefiting? It is the landlord. It's the state of landlordism that is benefiting. And, you know, I'm tired of people saying that, you know, affordable housing. I don't want no affordable housing. We need free fucking housing. We don't need affordable housing. You know what I'm saying? So, and this issue with homeless people, like Frank was mentioning, with the homeless and with Mayor Adams and these destructive policies and this kind of paternalism, where it's just like, you know, if you pay your rent, you're a good landlord. I remember actually we were at an action where a woman was like, yes, the landlord, this was a great tenant. He paid all his bills on time, but yeah, I'm still evicting him. So that has nothing to do with anything. This is a complete illusion that they push on people. It has nothing to do with rent. It has nothing to do with anything. And I would also like to see a bill pushed to where we do away with, you need to be making 40 times to afford to have a basic roof over your head. This needs to stop. People are dying because the conditions in their homes that they're living in, because they can't afford to move, is killing them. And, you know, this is why it is a genocidal tactic. And these issues of homeless people and homeless people being on the streets, and Mayor Adams wants to clean up the homeless situation. This is a deceptive tactic, you know, to kind of capture the imagination of the masses, to turn them against people who are in the same situation they're in. It is the same exact thing. And it's very duplicitous. And I hear and I call, we need to look beyond reforms. We need to, although we need to definitely fight for these and they're very necessary, at the same time, looking beyond good cause, looking beyond these things, because we need powerful socialist, communist leadership. We need that. Capital, with their, fixers and breakers, it's not going to fix anything. So I think we need to be pushing for militant action in order to see things definitely change. And we need to uproot these people who just want to hold our hands and give us band-aids, while at the same time doing destructive things to keep people locked in this situation of unending precarity. And I know I was a little all over the place, but yeah, I just really feel that in this crisis that we're continuously in, we don't have time to be saying that we can't do this and we don't have time for these, pseudo socialists that come into power that only push us further into burning houses, right? We need actual revolutionary leadership to help us to fight for these reforms while undergirded by militant revolutionary power, spirit, and community. This is what we need. We don't need no more fake ass bullshit. All right, that's it.
Thank you, comrade, so much. No more fake ass bullshit. We want to wind down a little bit, and so before questions and answers, just want to hear from a couple of my comrades to talk about horizons, possibilities, and beautiful futures. I think we want to hear from my comrade Nicolás first.
Hello. Yeah, Khadija, that was amazing. Thank you so much for uplifting those incredible incendiary points. Yeah, so I think the horizon, like how do we connect socialism with the tenant movement, I think is like important. And Khadija made so many great points as to, kind of the failings of, present movements, past movements to kind of make that connection. And I think, the horizon of the tenants movement is the same horizon as the socialist movement. It's, the abolition of private property, which will eventually end the exploitative relationship between property owners, landlords, and tenants who, use their wages to subsist on that property. So the tenant movement needs to be not only a political movement and a political revolution, but also social, and this is my opinion, and also a social and cultural revolution. So like a revolution that can expand and spill, past just the individual tenant's door frame and into the lobby and outside of the building and down the street, down the block, down the neighborhood. Kind of this movement will have to encompass all tenants, housed and unhoused, market rate, rent stabilized, private and public. So a citywide tenants union not only would contain, the constituency of tenants, ready to push for and enforce laws and protections that help us in our rent strikes and help us in our organizing, but it also will work to create kind of the prefigurative socialist composition of our society, right? So imagine like, tenant unions connecting our neighborhoods and blocks together through different, socialist institutions, socialist after school programs and childcare, socialist recreation leagues, red cafes like in Spain during the revolution, all owned by the union or worked for by the union for free. And, this will make the politics of everyday life a socialist politic. It'll make strong worker tenant movements strong enough to transform the material reality, because we'll see, past these kind of just basic legislative pushes that we'll see, people like enacting socialism in their everyday life, and which will create more connection and more militancy. And we see this working in, legislative policy bullshit, or it's necessary, workers in the streets withholding their labor and their rent, that's what's really getting these demands, met. And passed, the numbers, of people signing on to it, because we have a large enough constituency in these tenant unions to actually, force with leverage that, if they don't kind of pass or push, these legislations that will, kick them out or throw them out in the street and guillotine them. And then we need those kind of strong numbers in that constituency, but also that socialist way of life and that ability and that militancy to be ready to withhold your rent and withhold your labor with your neighbors, in order to get these, hard fought legislative stuff or even rent strikes to get enacted and to get pushed. That's how we got the eviction moratorium and how we got the extensions. That's how we got right to counsel in the 2019 tenant laws. So not only that, but we can't just wait until there are legislative opportunities and demands to organize around. The world needs transformation now. The conditions of tenants need transformation now, and it should happen every day. It should happen in our homes. It should happen in our workplaces. It should happen in the streets. And we need to merge all of those disparate struggles. And socialism and socialist revolution is the glue that will hold, that merger together.
Isaac, talk.
Yeah, absolutely, Nico. That's the role. That's the role of socialists. Okay, so how do we do it right? I think first things first, anytime people in the housing movement talk about commodification, talk about dollars and cents, socialists always have said, it's not about dollars and cents, look underneath, it's about power. That's what we talk about. We talk about power. Okay, second, liberals, blah, 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 they just see people as victims. Socialists see people as protagonists, right? We have the ability, the proletariat have the ability to bring about the revolutionary transformation of society. That's very important. So we see people as protagonists, not as victims, and we talk about power. We say that you have the right to fight, right? It's right to rebel, boom, okay, that's good, right? We say all these things, and we also talk about the history, all that history, that great context that everyone talked about at the beginning. We talk about where we are now, the present. Again, people have said great things about that. And we turn that into a story of the past, present, future of the tenant movement. And that's something we're talking about. We're not just talking about in panels Brooklyn Rail, but we're talking about it with our neighbors. We're talking about it in our tenant unions. We're including tenants in our conversations. And I think really what Nico is really putting forward, I think, is like beyond just a kind of politics of like, let's pay less rent. It's a politics of like kind of like sovereignty, almost like saying like self-determination. I think something similar to like what Frank was talking about where, we can't just see it as economism. We have to talk about like social control and social power. So that is what we're trying to do. Tenant Union Flatbush, more or less successfully. That's what it's really important. And I think we have to really think about not just it in our like, conversations here, but also when we're working in our tenant union. We can't just be talking about like reforms, right? We have to be talking about it, and we have to be crafting it into a whole story that we're telling everyone. And that's like, I think like the classic role of socialists is being involved in that process and being involved in crafting that story. Okay.
Thank you so much, comrade. Last word, Joel Feingold, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I think the socialist horizon of our movement is not something that's so abstract from, it's not something that fellow tenants in our neighborhood, it's not alien demand to the working class of New York. I can't count the number of times that a Crown Heights tenant union member has said to me, why do I need a landlord, right? I could run this building myself. My neighbors and I could run this building myself, right? Ourselves. And, that common sense, abolitionist revolutionary consciousness exists. It's not everywhere, but it exists. And so I think one key horizon, one key demand is expropriation, taking buildings from landlords and socializing them from the bottom up, and creating a mechanism for us to be able to socialize buildings permanently as public housing. And there are different views within our movement about whether or not a revolutionary sort of non-capitalist form of housing in common can exist within capitalism. I would say that it has existed before, and it needs to be under direct tenant control in the future. And so seizing buildings either through direct action and expropriation of buildings like we achieved at 1214 Dean Street after the slumlord tried to illegally evict people and our movement intervened and stopped that eviction. I think that's the horizon.
Beautiful, beautiful. Eleanor, I think that sort of wraps up the conversation. I want to thank all of my comrades who showed up today to be panelists and provide us with your insights and wisdoms.
Thank you so much. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just filling silence.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Holden and Esteban and Isaac and Nico, Frank, Joe, Khadija, and Ramza. It's been so great. We do have, and Cea. Sorry, we got a beautiful, huge group here. We do have a few questions from the audience. Our first question will be from our friend GE, and if more folks have questions, please throw them in the chat, or you can raise your hand on Zoom and stuff, and we can pass the mic over to you. But GE, please go ahead and kick us off. You should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Question in general for anyone on the panel or all of them in the panel to perhaps address or to add to. It seems as though a lot of times when a tenant complains about something, there's a lot of fear of or doesn't complain about something, especially violations and things. It seems they do it because there's a fear of retaliations and all these other kinds of things. Is that something that maybe creatively could be addressed to then also give other parts of this entire piece traction?
Is someone eager to take this? I can speak on it a little bit. The question was about like tenant hesitancy to like report conditions. And I think I would sort of answer that by hearkening back to what Comrade Khadija was saying. I think that very much is a question of political education, very much is a question of studying our material conditions and understanding where and how threats and risks are operating for us as tenants. And then I think that sort of study naturally will lead to organized action, right? Collective action. And I think that's like genuinely our whole recipe, I think. But
Yeah. Also, I would say that, like, Holden actually used to say this a long time ago. Stop kind of saying it, but the best outreach, and I would say some of the best political education is like really good work that you do. So neighbors seeing other neighbors going on rent strike. Like right now, we have a local in bed, 219 13th Street TA, who's on rent strike right now because of lack of gas for 4 months. And we did a banner drop, and there's 2 giant banners hanging in front of the building that says no gas, no rent, no gas, don't rent here. And so people drive by every day and they go real slow and they're like, holy shit, no gas. And like people have naturalized these conditions. People have gone without gas in New York City during the winter months tons of times, but people just don't know that you can stand up and fight back. And seeing your neighbors do it gives you that, it opens up that aperture of possibility. It says, oh, I can do that too. And, most of the neighbors that we talk to nowadays who are reaching out to us, they heard of us through, actions that were happening, or neighbors on rent strike or stuff like that. So I think truly, like, we need to, kind of push outward what we're doing and not keep it atomized, to the building. And that's kind of what the citywide could provide too, that platform.
Frank.
Also I just want to note that, like, we're not all operating in the same under the same conditions. Like, rent stabilized tenants and unregulated tenants are not in the same boat. Unregulated tenants can be evicted at any point by just not having a lease renewal. So that makes organizing unregulated tenants a lot harder because they have to take a lot more risk. So that's why at the state level we push for things like good cause, because it can sort of bring some even parity to what we're able to do. So it's not probably as sexy as some of the other stuff, but it will help.
Yeah, I think that's right, Esteban, but I also think it's right, Nico. It's not impossible to organize unregulated renters, and the strength of being in a group, like, can't be understated. Like, it's not that profound, but calling through and one by yourself is way different than like something as simple as getting all your neighbors in the lobby and having a 3-in-1 call day together. And having like a sense of community is really important. If you are fearing retaliation, it's going to be a lot harder to retaliate against everybody together than one by one. I think that, rent control, which we desperately need. And yeah, folks can do things like tell their stories in the press, tell their stories on social media, and the fight is really critically important. And I'll stop.
I think Frank's on stack, guys.
All I was going to say is that the original question regarding the tenant, why didn't they want to bring this up? I mean, there's also the possibility that the tenant has determined that the landlord is about bullshit and isn't going to make a repair and has kind of just given up. I think we ought to also be thinking in terms of our socialist battalions, come equipped with tools, and the ability to do, along with what Joel was saying, seizing the buildings, is that getting away from reinforcing the whole dynamic and hierarchy of landlord making repairs and so forth. I get it. They are responsible for that. But on the other hand, organizing people with our own construction brigades that come in and do this work with the politics of seizing this building. And in the immediate situation, yeah, no, it's one thing to demand that they get no rent and the gas be turned on and so forth and so on. But to the extent that is ongoing, the people are still suffering from day to day without those basics. And it may be a situation where through popular construction brigades, they can come in, do this work and write it off in terms of the rents and so forth and so do whatever, but empower the tenants to take the building in material ways for themselves. And, along with, occupy, squatting vacant space, that's a desanctifying private property in action. I mean, it's socialism in action. So I think shifting away from always relying on the landlord, relying on the state to come to our meet our needs, rather than developing ways on the grassroots. And just practically speaking, and I'll close with this, is that my experience, again, and I've mentioned this before, is that in situations where the landlord's not making repairs, when the tenants band together, make those repairs and write them off and so forth, the next time they ask for repairs, the landlords jump, because they understand that what's going on here is the tenants are taking the house. And I think that's, we need to think in those terms as well.
I also wanted to add as well that I think another reason that people, are reluctant to come forward is because, capital just makes deplorable living conditions so natural. Like, it's a natural occurrence. I remember, I think Gramsci also mentions this when he talks about cultural hegemony. Like, it just becomes a natural thing. Like, I'm living in a, broken down, roach infested thing, and this is a natural, and it also makes people feel as though they are solely responsible for their conditions. Yes. And it is up to them to do this, and all they have to do is work 17 jobs and everything is going to be fine. And as we can see, people are working numerous jobs and still cannot afford to live in a decent housing situation, or driven into homelessness. A lot of people are in shelters and are working, the working homeless population. So I think that it's just the way capital moves, in which it makes things like a natural occurrence, like a thunder, that these conditions are acceptable and there's nothing you can do. But the thing that you can do, which is what everyone's saying, is you can organize. And like Nico said, when people see you not paying rent, that galvanizes something in another person, and they don't want to do it, and the motion goes. And so we need to make people understand that there's nothing natural about capitalism, and there's nothing natural about being in a deplorable living space. There's nothing natural about starving. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Beautiful.
I wanted to go back to, is it Felix? Felix's question about directly fighting gentrification and to preserve the cultural the history and integrity of predominantly Black and Brown neighborhoods. The way CHTU, sort of the founding notion of CHTU was that we wanted to sort of understand gentrification as a cycle of displacement of long-term Black working class tenants of Crown Heights, and then the same landlords turn around and illegally overcharge new tenants. And our analysis was that those are not the same harms. In no way, shape, or form can you talk about the social and ethnic cleansing of a neighborhood, the displacement of Black working class Brooklyn, as the same problem or same level of harm as a new tenant being illegally overcharged, but they're cyclically linked. And so our notion was that we could unite and fight, centering the struggles of long-term Black working class tenants to hold the neighborhood because they built the neighborhood, right? And then also roll back those illegal overcharges too, so that it could continue to be a neighborhood for working class people. So that's one way. We don't talk too much about gentrification in those terms. We try to make it really concrete to what people see in the buildings, which is that everyone's being pushed out and then the rent's crazy high. And we can fight that.
Cool. Felix, if you want to add anything like follow-up questions or anything, you can totally feel free to unmute. No pressure though, but you totally can.
Yeah, I thank Joel for that answer. I think everybody for this call actually has been very insightful to see how you guys get down. I'm coming from the South, so I haven't really been exposed to all the ways that you guys are advocating for each other. So it's beautiful for me to see. And I'm excited to start getting down with you guys as well. But I think what more so I'm asking is, I'm in Bed-Stuy currently myself, and I moved here to be around a more Black-centric experience, and that's not exactly what I'm experiencing while I'm here. And I'm experiencing a lot of my Black and brown neighbors that are also experiencing violence at the hands of these new white neighbors. So that's why I asked my question in that way, because at the end of the day, when we protect tenants, we are still protecting the white tenants as well, but that does not address the harm that is being caused to the Black people that are being displaced or disrespected as they occupy these spaces. So that's what I meant by my question. Like, for the first time since I've been here, which, you know, the block parties are a frequent kind of staple of Bed-Stuy. So for the first time since I've been here, I even brought it up to my therapist. I was witnessing a lot more white bodies occupying the streets, jogging, walking dogs. And it was alarming to me because that, like I said, that's not what I moved here to have that experience. I intentionally avoided Williamsburg and places like that so I could be around more culture. So it was just something that I paid attention to. And that night or the night following during the block party, the police were called for the first time since I lived here in 9 months. And that was very like triggering for me because so much of Black culture has been stolen and displaced and erased. And these are our love languages. And these are the ways that our culture has tried to strive in adversity and still connect with each other and still express our joy for existing. So to have that harm, anytime a white person calls the police on a Black person, regardless of what the outcome is, that puts us all in danger. And that's what I meant by how are we going to address gentrification and that stuff, as well as advocating for the tenants.
Can I go?
Yes, Nico, I love you.
What up, Felix? We love Felix. Felix is a bed member also and an amazing organizer in their own right. So yeah, no, I think, yeah, talking about the intersections of, you know, the influx of new renters that are not, you know, native to these places, these like cultural, you know, hubs, these like very, very, very specific demographic areas, like how that also creates an influx of hyper policing. But like Joel was talking about, it's like cyclically linked to like also like new development. It's not just like white people moving in, it's more expensive you know, developments that are priced out of these communities, their income brackets. And so that brings in, you know, more policing, and that brings in, you know, kind of more kind of a reflex and tendency to call the police and act on the police when that becomes more of a presence. And so, like, you know, relating it to Frank and to what I was saying before, like not only strictly focusing on the economistic demands of like protecting tenants, but also just a true social and cultural transformation of ourselves also as socialists and as, you know, workers and tenants who are in community together, we have to interrogate those like ingratiated reflexes that are taught to us by, you know, these ideological apparatuses within the capitalist, the racist capitalist state. So like that reflex to call the police and not just talk to your neighbors about turning down the motherfucking music. And like, if you got to fucking go to sleep, okay, talk to me. You don't have to fucking call the pig. Like that will never help. But when you have these tenants associations and we have these really strong connections, that those reflexes become you know, less, you know, apparent, because you have more opportunities and you have more options to kind of to what's it called, you know, not only transform but to mediate those different, you know, needs and necessities and desires between people who live together. You know, capital has moved people out of our communities and we can't reverse that right now. We can stop it, but like it's going to be very hard to bring those people back, and we maybe should try you know, as a form of fucking reparations. But like, we need to stop what's going on right now, which is the gentrification and what's happening because of gentrification, and that, you know, involves a necessity for like cultural and social revolution.
Yes. Yeah, I also wanted to add to that, what Nico so eloquently said. Yeah, like for me, I grew up in Flatbush, you know, I'm from Flatbush. I can't afford to live here, you know, and I feel exactly what Felix is saying. And I also know Best Side. Best Side is, as everyone knows, historically Black neighborhood. I don't see hardly any Black people there. And we need to like really address this issue that, you know, people coming in and, you know, displacing and completely uprooting the cultural, the identity of these neighborhoods, you know. And it directly ties in just to the way that the tentacles of capital move. It moves to dispossess. It moves to create all of these antagonisms between the two groups. You know, I understand, like, you know, we have a solidarity, but we need to address what is causing people, you know, these Black people who are disproportionately affected by these conditions and these laws, to just be uprooted from their neighborhood and to lose the cultural significance of these neighborhoods. They are not there. Even in Harlem, when I'm in Harlem, you see a lot of white people coming into Harlem, and it just completely guts the very rich history of these neighborhoods, and we need to protect and address that. Yes, it's going to be very hard for to bring our people back in, but we need to really aggressively address the losing of the cultural identity of these neighborhoods. That is why people were attracted to these neighborhoods in the first place. I remember, you know, there's a YIMBY NIMBY thing going on. I remember reading something where one of these YIMBY people said, gentrification is natural. Gentrification is not fucking natural. There's nothing natural about it. It's nothing natural about being dispossessed. Dispossession is a violent perpetrator and attacker, and there's nothing natural about being dispossessed from your home and your neighborhood. And it's a cultural dispossession as well. And I feel like we definitely need to address these things, because the culture of the neighborhoods are being completely annihilated. And I think we as communists and socialists, we need to work to understand the rich history and the Black tradition of these neighborhoods. And when we understand their significance, then we will better be able to serve these people who are going through this the most, who are affected by these things the most, who are being murdered and raped the most. And we need to really address these things, because we could all say, you know, yeah, we are socialists and communists, but if you see your brother or your sister on the street and they're being dispossessed and you have your white friend moving in, that's not camaraderie of you. And so we need to really be forthcoming and honest in our critique of these things.
Eleanor, is that where we wrap?
I think that's a really good place to move over to poetry. Thank you so much, Khadija, for that kind of closing note. Thank you, everybody. And we do have a tradition here at the Rail of ending our community events with a poetry reading. And I am super excited to introduce Joselia Hughes, who will be closing us out this afternoon. Bronx-based Joselia Hughes is a disabled Afro-Caribbean writer, artist, and educator. She is a poetry editor at Apogee Journal. Joselia's work hops in the lineage of Black disabled aesthetics and linguistics of access. She's shared work at the Institution of Contemporary Art, VCU, Lincoln Center, MoMA, and elsewhere, and her writing has been published or is forthcoming in Massachusetts Review, The Poetry Project, and many other places. And I am super happy to turn it over to you, Joselia. Thank you for being here today. I think you just got on mute.
Okay. Hey,
Thank
everyone. Thanks. Thanks for being here. Thank you for that conversation. It was great. My head is kind of spinning at this moment. Much to write about, much to think through. And yeah, I'm gonna read some stuff that I hope feels relevant. This one is Denominator Mandate. In an attempt to escape another 5 a.m., got sick, stayed sick hospital memory, pink coat phlebotomist posed with puncture, a butterfly needle to draw 4 vacutainers of hard to pull, hard to flow blood jam. In an attempt to point pain at some other pain's back, I laughed. Seriousness, or lack thereof, often indicates debt, detriment, or debility, some D word undergirding detonate, depends if the doctor systematizes teach to practice or teach to punish. Less abstractly, there's this howling outside and no open mouth screaming. I'm seeing the best minds of my generation destroyed by denial of long COVID, operating normal with the fill-in-the-blank range of a firing squad, fascism flirting as fitting in, sequences of brilliance severed by a stolen attention economy so valuable even the influencers need coaxing, and hell, in 10 years' time, the fog finna frame so foundational, we probably won't even remember whatever discourses misled the abstruse as insert party excellence. Still, police drive past the base of the block, hemming home a balloon to pop, posting officers akimbo like lead-painted puppets stalking the chicken spot where the unemployed union delegates hang out to sidewalk erect funerals for peoples they don't know but could have. In the middle of the road, a Chevy Impala spinning red, white, and blue like a disco ball of surveillance refracted. I haven't seen the smiling face of a friend in weeks. Humiliation, mental illness, vigilance, and care can assemble a life invisible. Please remember, like the swear line on a signatory letter, love is an action of change. We keep using the word risk like we share risks aliases, but really, tell heirs jury, tear-stained and shaken, when's the last time you held your breath to ache? What habits exact a release away? Which names do you use to play craps with death? Which selves make public form and mandates? Or which opportunities can a self seize by a lack thereof? I'm going to read this other one that's getting, so both of these are being published by the Massachusetts Review, disability issue. And this one is about ability and being able. Eye trick, number 2. Jeremiah visions, but is not able to look. It is not that he doesn't want to look. It is that, and vice versa, one entry of vision trades one exit of looking. Jeremiah's entrance proves precise when he encounters John, a person who able gazes and looks, but never visions. At the corner of Cone Court and Rod Road, John's head up and Jeremiah's head down, circumstance brings them to meet. The chance of their divided postures rereads coin toss into idiosyncratic yet sure possibility. Their encounter, expressed another way, animates a multi-frame sidewalk collision where no eyes meet and arms flail in an improvised dance of opposition, fluttering and furious and fecund. John's gold neck pendant pulls loose 3 stitches of Jeremiah's knit sweater. Jeremiah's kneed filing nails scrape an X on John's under wrist. Although briefly suspended in this happening, renamed curious effort of a coin toss, they crack closed the fury of their collision without acknowledgement, laugh, smile, deference, or concern. They see past each other. They continue moving in opposite directions. Neither selects able in second thought or direct answer. Hours later, after nightfall and dinner time, Jeremiah touches his sage green sweater. He feels the lumpy lift of 3 loosened stitches. Jeremiah reflects, when could this have happened? He remembers the sensation of a shared taut attraction and cannot think to the specifics of with whom. On the other side of town, John sits in his leather recliner. He picks up his fiber work box. 1 bamboo needle falls out, lands on his wrist. John gazes upon his skin, welted to X, and asks, when did this happen? And how didn't I feel this before? And the last piece is a redaction of an Architectural Digest article about Parasite. Yeah, it's called Eating at Another Table. Direct a genre, a haunting will win honor of a kind master and end will leave your mouth. Ape, direct a laugh, define it, scary. You feel a mix of emotions, but think, I want to feel like a portal of time. Story class, divide families, meet in a semi-basement kind of home, common because it is realistic, because it reflects the psyche of tell. A translator still half over ground. There's hope and still access to light, and you haven't completely fallen to yet. This mixture, this fear that you can lower, I think, to how the protagonists feel. In order to get it right, design empty towns set to be torn down and then copy them, set traces of people who lived via translator, ghost towns, model old bricks in empty houses, recreate them. Intricate backstories for fictional neighbors inform the fake. One particular is children, cities to collect reusable garbage to make living design. Other characters include a shaman and someone unemployed. Want to be realistic? Realize we built on a set. Eventually, the wealthy introduce their center of action and place society and dwell their want to show off and garden we an empty lot. And we built on a own stage with plenty of secrets and much sneaking around, so design choices we with simple logics in mind. If one character is down, can the character see? Aesthetically, create, house an avaricious elitist, design like an architect. We so real, we actually living it. The result is wood, glass, lines, and silhouettes. We purpose living, room appreciate. The designer gave a wall of glass looking out and outfitted it with a television. I wanted living, room, and one impressive picture, says status. And some people appear real, deal an image of stainless steel, form an artist, hang on one wall. We look like a massive wave, start from a throne quiet, and living space does more than provide pitch and characterize dark. Home drives plot to an expected place, furnished, lit, set. So the twist says, houses should feel mundane and comfortable and threatened when we feel fear. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joselia. It's truly blown away. It's been a really incredible, really special afternoon. Thank you so much to everyone who came to listen and for everybody who asked questions. Thank you again to Nicolás, Esteban, Khadija, Isaac, Joel, Ramza, Cea, Frank, and Holden. We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program and for supporting our growing archive, which you can check out on our YouTube channel. And the recording of this conversation will be up there soon as well. And please join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Woody De Othrella and Charlie Schultz on the event of Maybe Tomorrow at Karma Gallery. We'll be concluding with a poetry reading as well. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much again, everyone. It's been a really special conversation, and I hope everybody has a good rest of your day. Take care. And you should all be able to unmute and say hello and goodbye as you're heading out.
Later.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.
Stay fortified and strong. Take care.